So hello, welcome to Kyle's Phenomenological Method. On this show, I try to take seemingly complex ideas and break them down into bite-sized pieces that everyone can easily digest. Today I have Rico with me. Hello, Rico. One of my longtime friends, probably my first friend I ever had, and definitely my best friend. And that's it. Do you have anything you'd like to do or say for the audience, Rico?
Nothing. Was kind of promote anything?
You can promote whatever you want.
Guys, go listen to the Miko and Rico podcast on Spotify. Go listen to Fanning the Fire. That's just Kyle and I. We talk about anything and everything that's hot subjects. We are going to be releasing episodes every week. So, yeah, go give those a listen.
Yep, and they're really good, so you guys should definitely go check those out. I'll put a link to them in the description of the video.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So the phenomenological method. Just for a little intro, in case you might not know what the phenomenological method is.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenology seeks to determine the essential properties and structures of experience through systematic reflection. It does this by creating conditions for objective study of topics typically regarded as subjective. So this is, I don't believe this is Hegel, I believe this is Heidegger. But Heidegger is a creator of phenomenology as a field of study. I believe he first coined the term. But this is a little bit about Hegel's personal philosophy and why I think that phenomenology is inherently dialectical. So Hegel believed dialectical reasoning was the only method of human thought. And the dialectic can be kind of understood as thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And I have a slide for that. So to kind of explain the dialectic real quick, you start with a thesis. So let's say you like oranges. There's an antithesis that you would come to as you're kind of progressing through your thesis of maybe I don't like oranges. And the synthesis, which is also the new thesis for a new antithesis, is I like, or something about how oranges and not liking oranges kind of connect in your mind. This is, they believe this is a way to understand the entire universe. If you can get to here, or if you can reach the highest level of synthesis, then you can reach the absolute like truth in the universe. And that's what I'm aiming to do here. I believe that's an idealistic view on the world, but I think it's better than believing that everything's physical, because then how do you explain extraterrestrial stuff? All right. But to kind of get back to phenomenology, I should have had this slide on a different one. But absolute idealism is something I'd like to kind of mention here as well. So absolute idealism is in order for a thinking subject, human reason or consciousness, to know its object, the subject must have some sense of identity and being. So what they're trying to say here is like, if you see an orange cup, you have to understand that you're not part of the orange cup. So you have to have some sense of like identity and being in order to realize that the orange cup's not part of you. That's what they're trying to get at here. And I will bring that back in from where we were at before. Or I mean, I will like connect that to what we're talking about here. So to explain this diagram here, Husserl, so it was actually, yeah, I guess Heidegger wasn't the one who started this. This is Husserl.
Who is that guy again?
So Heidegger is who we, when you think of phenomenology nowadays, he's the one who like kind of created the framework for it. But Husserl is the one who like laid the base work for him. So the difference between Husserl and Heidegger is that Husserl believed that consciousness was like the center of the universe and then existence was on the outside of that. So a good way to kind of view that is the difference between geocentric and heliocentric theories, where geocentric has Earth as the middle of the universe and the sun is orbiting the Earth, where heliocentric sees the sun as the middle of the universe and knows that the Earth is orbiting the sun. And that just kind of like explains the difference between Husserl and Heidegger's views, because Husserl believed that consciousness was the main phenomenon in our life, and then existence was outside of that. But Heidegger claims that existence is the main part, and then consciousness is outside of that. I happen to believe in Heidegger's view more because you can exist while not being conscious of it. Like when you go to sleep, you're not conscious of your existence, but you're still existing. So that's my argument for that. All right, and this is so if my kind of definition of phenomenology wasn't thorough enough, this is a good way to explain it. This is actually an adaptation on one picture I made in the like a past episode. But what I'm trying to get at is the true like experience of this wall, let's say. And if you're on top or if you're on bottom, you'll see different sides of the wall. But what I would like is the complete picture. So for this person here, they would say that the wall is black and he would be telling the truth. But for this person here, they say the wall is red and they would also be telling the truth. But what I want to do is combine both people's like points of view into a complete picture so that we know that the wall is both red and black. Because if you're from the red camp, if someone says the wall is black, you're going to think they're lying, right? So I just want to have like a complete picture so that I can get the full like definition of experience.
So it's just like that picture where someone standing on one side looking and it says 6, and the person's on the other side saying it's 9. Okay.
Exactly like that. That's exactly what I'm trying to do here. And how the dialectic kind of forms into that is once I get this, I can easily go on to something else over here because I'll know from here that it's different from over here. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I can just do that to like kind of, like I was saying, get to that absolute idea of the absolute and kind of hopefully share that with everybody else. All right, so we did that. This is kind of another way to view the dialectic. So let's say you have, what would be a good example? Water and soil, and it leads to a plant. And then that plant is kind of something that when connected with an animal leads to food for us higher up in the food chain. So you can kind of look at this as like a food chain. And you just kind of keep going down or up depending on what you're trying to like accomplish. So I'm trying to go up because I want to find that first principle of like what everything started from. But you could easily go down and like get as complex as you'd really like to with like anything in this world. So that's kind of why I like the dialectic, because it applies to like literally everything in this world.
So like a family tree too.
Yeah, exactly like a family tree. All right, but there is a caveat to the dialectic. It can't be mechanically applied for any chosen thesis. So critics argue that the selection of any antithesis over the logical negation of the thesis is subjective and therefore is not rigorously defendable from other like answers to the same question. So for example, if I want to say 2 + 2 = 3, unless my thesis or my antithesis is that it's not 3, then it's not really a fair antithesis because it's based off of something that I'm choosing, not the logical thing. Because you could easily say 2 + 2 = 5, and I would not be able to defend it against that. This is like another way to kind of see the dialectic kind of in a different way. So I don't know if I really want to explain this whole picture here. Let's move on from that. All right, so on to the poem and quote analysis. So this is a segment of my show I like to kind of do. It kind of sets like the tone for the rest of the video because you kind of get really deep into the quotes and poems. And, you know, sometimes there's some like deep things in there that kind of relate to what I'm talking about as well. So without further ado, this quote, I guess, is by Nikki Hamid, the professor of happiness. It says that there are 2 sides to everything, and the seed of each is within the other. Do you have any first like initial thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, you're asking me. Not really. I mean, because it's just like it shows the picture. It says the yin and the yang. On a coin, there's heads and there's tails. I mean, people should, get the gist of it.
I think it kind of goes a little deeper. So, for example, my kind of problem with this is like the seed of like each is within the other. So let's say that this black part is evil and this white part is good. So they're saying that like the seed of evil is in good and the seed of good is in evil.
So what you're saying is that in each like good person, there's a little seed of something bad inside of them, and each bad person, there's a little seed of something good that you don't really see on the outside, but it's within.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at here.
Okay.
For example, like you know how they say the path to evil is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can kind of see how that would kind of play out here, where it's like people who are evil or who are like kind of subjecting others to unfair conditions truly just want to be free from unfair conditions themselves.
Mhm.
But you can see why people who are in unfair conditions would want to put the other people in those positions themselves.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah, I'm getting it.
So yeah, that's what I get from this quote. Do you have any other comments on it?
Not really. I mean, because thinking about it, it's like, so it's saying no one's born evil. It's what the parents plant into their head when they're born. Is what they're getting raised on. It's what people are subjected to within life. Is that what you're getting at?
Uh, I'm not taking it that far. I'm
Oh,
just saying that like
okay.
in every evil act, there's probably
Yeah.
a attempt to be good.
So like someone steal. So say a father's stealing bread for their like his hungry family.
Yeah. You can
Okay.
see how he just wants to provide, which we would see
Yep.
as good, but
Yep.
on the other side, he's stealing, which is we would consider
Yeah.
bad.
Hmm.
All right. So moving on to this. This is an Alan Watts quote. I'll go ahead. Now, as far as I can see, the basic mistake is we've invented this wonderful system of language and calculation, and that it is at once too simple to deal with the complexity of the world, and also we are liable to confuse the system of symbols with the world itself. The part I'm kind of stuck on here is to confuse the system or confuse that system of symbols with the world itself. Uh, for example, like everyone always says that things are evil, but like how many people have actually experienced like true evil? I believe your mic is muted right now.
What do you mean?
Was your mic muted?
For a second, I had to
Okay.
do something.
All right. All right.
I had to yell. I had to get my glasses.
Okay. Oh,
I
you
didn't want
trying
to. I didn't want to yell it on the mic. There. Now I can see.
All right. So what I'm getting from this is that we've created this wonderful system of language that's not complex enough to deal with the world that we experience, but we also confuse the words that we've created for the experiences that they're supposed to represent.
Okay.
Do you believe this to be true? I feel like our language is pretty kind of all encompassing, but I know there's words that the Japanese have that we don't have like words for, so we have to be missing something.
Well, I was growing up too, and what people were putting in my brain was that we have a mutual friend that says our English is like spoken wrong, that English the British English is the proper way to speak, and that ours is like a little broken still. I'm like, okay. I mean,
Yeah, they have that. There's the same thing in like Spanish where like
mm,
Spain Spanish is different from like Mexico
yep,
Spanish.
yeah.
It's just kind of preference, really.
Hmm. And then it's so weird too how people can automatically think, boom, I know where you're from. You're from this spot because you're speaking this way, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, I we speak the same language but different, like
Dialects.
how we, yeah. So like people like pop. We say pop. Some people say soda. Some people say boom. So you know where someone's from when they say pop or soda.
Yeah, that's a good
Hmm.
example in the U.S. because there's a definite, clear kind of distinction there. I don't
Yeah,
even know anyone who says soda or
I
like
know a
soda
couple people.
pop. If you say soda pop, I automatically know you're not from where I'm from.
I'd say soda pop, dude.
Can I get a
I'll be
soda
like, I'll
pop?
take a soda pop. And I'm from here. I
I
just
don't
say it both
know.
just so it's like if I say both, then it feels like, oh, I'm gonna get one right. I'll get half the answer correct.
I mean, yeah, kind of. At least then you're getting at least like 50% on that bet. It's like betting for and against Steph Curry at the same time.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else for this quote?
No.
All right, moving on. So I believe this is a poem. It's from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in 1850. So this is get a little outdated. A psalm of life. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and the things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us further than today. I really like that little last part there where it is not our destined way to have enjoyment or sadness, but to be better today than what we were the other day. But I'd
Did you
like
want me
to
to say something?
What'd you say?
Did you want me to say something?
Oh yeah, if you have any comments on this.
Okay. So it's like saying like reality to some people can be a suggestion. It's like instead of someone saying this is really bad or something, they can try to turn it into something good in their eyes, but yet they're still feeling empty on the inside, no matter how hard they're trying to change the situation.
Where were you getting that from? The first, second, or third stanza?
I was just throwing it out there because I saw it when it says, life is but an empty dream. Because I was just taking small parts out of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you were saying that's
what I got from this poem.
Okay. Huh. So that's kind of
what's
interesting.
That? That's a person.
What here?
Wait, that's a fairy.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a fairy or something.
I thought it was just a flower, and then I looked closer. I was like, wait, that's a head.
Yeah, butterfly wings and shit.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'm gonna try and pull something from the second stanza since we had the first and third. Not the grave. Grave is not a skull. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. So life is real and life is earnest, honest, and the grave is not the point. So dying is not the point of life. So I guess I would kind of go into like what they're saying in the third, where it's like the point of life is to get better every day than you were the last day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So that will bring us right into. You got something else?
I was under the last part of it says, "Was not spoken of the soul." Is that like? Do you? I believe it sounds like they wanted to, like someone wanted to say something or take a chance that they didn't do, and later in life is regretting it. That's what I took from that last part. Like say something to someone, like say you love someone, or confess your feelings to someone, or tell someone how it is, or something like that, and then later on in life, like sitting there thinking about like, oh, I regret saying that or not saying it because it gets them like mentally or physically too, their spirit and soul.
Yeah,
that's what I got from that last part. That the last line in the second
stanza.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was thinking of the third line in the second stanza.
Okay.
Dust thou art, to dust returnest. So I think that means that like kind of you came from dust and that's where you're gonna end up when it's all over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like, I mean, death is a part of life, whether you like it or not. One thing I kind of learned from just doing these is like anything that begins also must have an end. That's just like the kind of what we were talking about here, where the two sides of everything, like the seed of death is in birth, because once you're born, you're destined to die. So I think that's what they're coming at here with dust without art to dust returnest, because you started off as dust, and because you were brought into the world, you must also be taken out, which is something that we must I mean, come to terms with at the end of the day.
Yeah. So when my mom tells me when I do something bad, I'm
What?
about you into this world, I'll take you out. I can take you out. When you're younger and you do something bad, and it's like, come here. And it's like, okay.
Oh, fuck yeah. All right. So moving on. The topic for today's discussion is confirmation bias. I have a couple of slides on here, and then so how I plan to do the rest of this is I have some slides on here, and then I plan to go to the Wikipedia page, and then another source I have from a book I was reading on this, and hopefully I'll be able to explain what it is, explain like how it happens, and then explain why it's bad and like the consequences of it. Okay, so confirmation bias, also called confirmatory bias or my-side bias, is a tendency to search for, favor, interpret, and recall information in a way that confirms one's beliefs or hypothesis while giving disproportionately less consideration to alternative possibilities. People display this bias when they gather or remember information selectively or when they interpret it in a biased way. This effect is stronger for emotionally charged issues and for deeply entrenched beliefs. So pretty much this is like, you go on Facebook and you'll go to like one website and all their sources are from the same place. And like they're always trying to get you to believe on one side of a certain issue. Yeah. That's what confirmation bias is you give all of your attention to one like side of an issue while completely ignoring the other side or giving disproportionately less consideration to another possibility.
Yeah. It's like when your girlfriend's yelling at you and she says you can go out, but you need to do something. All you hear is, "Oh, you can go out," and you're like, "Okay, cool." And then you leave, and then you get in trouble because you didn't do the one thing she asked you to do. It's like selective hearing.
Exactly, selective hearing is a great way to put that. So confirmation bias happens in three ways. There's biased interpretation. Confirmation biases are not limited to the collection of evidence. Even if two individuals have the same information, the way they interpret it can be biased. So, for example, me and you could look at the letter 9, and you might get something different from it than I would. And in a way, like you might see it as like a symbol to like, oh, maybe I should be careful here. Well, I might just see it as a number 9. It all just depends on like the bias that you have. And we all experience bias, which is why I think this is a good topic because everyone can relate to it. There is a disconfirmation bias where people set higher standards of evidence for hypotheses that go against their current view. This is known as disconfirmation bias. So like, when you're arguing with someone and no matter what you have to say, like they're on their, like they've already made their mind up pretty much.
Oh yeah. You can't change their mind at all.
Yeah, that's what this is. Because they're making the standards of evidence for your hypothesis like twice as high as what theirs are. So no matter how much evidence you present to them, it'll never be enough. That happens to me a lot, where it's like, well, I'm sure this will happen to me in a little bit, where my kid, he'll be like hungry and he'll want something. He'll be like, "Oh, I'm really hungry, Dad. I want this, and this," and he just ate like 30 minutes ago. I'm gonna have that disconfirmation bias where it's like, you need to prove that you're not hungry by waiting another 20 minutes or doing something. Well, he could be hungry at that time. It doesn't matter because my standards will be higher for him to prove to me that he's hungry.
So you're gonna starve your kid.
I'm just kidding. DCFS, it's a joke. It's a joke.
Someone's gonna take that out of context.
Yeah, that's not. I might not post this one. This one might not get posted. I'm just. The other way that confirmation bias can kind of appear is an overconfidence in your beliefs. So confirmation biases contribute to overconfidence in personal beliefs and can maintain or strengthen beliefs in the face of contrary evidence. So pretty much like, if you believe that cars won't hit you when you step in the middle of the road, the more you step in the road and don't get hit, the stronger your belief is that cars won't hit you, regardless if the next car hits you. Like you're
Yeah.
supposed to believe that. And what this is saying is like it's kind of like a feedback loop where you have that overconfidence and you don't get checked for it. So then the next time you'll be even more confident in your overconfidence.
Then boom, reality check.
Yeah, and then I mean, hopefully, hopefully the reality check is like a safe thing and like something you can recover.
Okay, yeah.
But like most of the time, if you like are super overconfident about something and you are wrong, it usually doesn't end up well.
Nope.
All right, so we just kind of went over that. So bias, search, interpretation, and memory have been invoked to explain attitude polarization, which is when a disagreement becomes more extreme, even though the different parties are exposed to the exact same evidence. So, for example, like you know how people who were like pro-Trump would like go crazy over shit he says when like other people who weren't pro-Trump wouldn't go as crazy. That's what this is. Like when you are faced with something that you are highly believe in, your attitude and like your emotions kind of get higher and like are more intense.
So politics. So the Democrats, Republicans, the left, the right, they all believe in stuff.
Yeah, but it goes both ways.
Yeah, and that's what you're talking about the last slide too, is that they're already set. Their things are 2 times higher than what they believe in. Yep, that's what you were explaining in the last one.
Perfect. That's exactly why I did it like this. I'm glad that shit worked out. So then there's belief perseverance. This is one that I kind of took personal interest in because it's really interesting to me because belief perseverance is when beliefs persist after evidence for them is shown to be false. So like, let's say the problem of evil for the Bible. How can you deal with the fact that evil exists in the face of like a perfectly moral, all powerful, and all knowing God? But some people's beliefs persist, even though there's evidence that shows that they really shouldn't have those beliefs. So that's what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that when I'm shown information that I will like switch my beliefs and like switch my side, but there's obviously been cases where people don't do that. And how do I know what cases I have in my own personal life that I have belief perseverance where I shouldn't have it? For example, like what would be a good one? I guess an easy one would be like smoking cigarettes. Like there's a bunch of evidence that shows that you shouldn't do it, but like you don't think it's gonna happen to you, so you don't have I believe in child psychology that's like called invincibility complex or something. I don't know.
Like
but,
drinking and driving, people believe it's not going to happen to them, and all of a sudden, boom, it does.
Yep. And that's a confirmation bias, and and that's going back to what we were talking about earlier, where you like have that overconfidence. Once it works one time, you'll feel like you can do it 1,000 times. So there's a primacy effect. An irrationally greater reliance on information encountered early in a series. So this is actually a pretty well-known thing in psychology. There's a primacy recency effect where you remember the first and last things in a kind of discussion, but you have trouble remembering the middle. But this can be shown for like, let's say the media, like how this kind of the privacy effect shows how important the media is because the media decides like what gets shown first.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say for Breonna Taylor, if they would have said she was like a drug dealing gang lord, and it turns out in the like they say that first, and then in the next they say that she was actually like a saint, didn't do anything wrong. More people would use the drug dealing gang lord just because it was the first thing that was said to like describe her. There's also illusory correlation when people falsely perceive an association between two events or situations. This could be considered connecting too many dots. So it's like, oh, my mailman came at 5:30 today. That means I'm good to go buy this lottery ticket. That way that the president doesn't shoot me in 20 minutes if I don't buy this lottery ticket. Just like it's kind of delusional because you'll perceive that something completely unrelated that happened is like completely related to whatever you're trying to argue for.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's like Like, is it like those people that wear like those hardcore conspiracy theorists, where they go outside and they wear the like aluminum hats or whatever?
Oh yeah, so yeah, that could a good example of that would be like people who think 5G lives in your head or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's
Yeah, and some people
expecting too
believe
many
like
bats.
people believe that there's tracking devices in the vaccine and stuff.
Yeah, and that's just
Yeah.
illusory correlation. So what I'm hoping is that like I can present these like uh ways that confirmation bias kind of presents itself, and hopefully it'll help kind of create less confirmation bias in the future from people who at least watch this video.
Mhm.
All right. So
Ugh.
there's a couple theories for why this happens. I'm about to go off site for this.
Don't get sued.
Oh no, I'm a block anything bad out. All right. So I'm gonna do, I believe there's 3 of these I want to go over. Oh, I guess I can do the 4th one. And then after that, I'll go into the outside source. And then after that, that'll be it. So there's currently 3 information processing explanations for why confirmation bias happens, plus a recent addition, which I'm guessing is the one at the bottom. So according to Robert McCune, most bias evidence processing happens through a combination of cold or cognitive and hot motivated mechanisms. Cognitive explanations for confirmation bias are based on limitations in people's ability to handle complex tasks and the shortcuts that are called heuristics that they use to kind of make these things easier to do. So for example, people may judge the reliability of evidence by using the availability heuristic, that is, how rarely a particular idea comes to mind. So this happens in, one reason this is kind of a bad thing is, well, especially with the availability heuristic is if you're like get drunk or something and end up in like a crime scene, they're gonna associate you with that crime scene just because like that's the first thing that'll pop into anyone's mind. But that's not the availability heuristic isn't confirmation bias. That is it's called the availability heuristic. All right, so hand that open for that.
So like as in wrong, like you're at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, and then people will just kind of base their first judgments off you based off of that, not based off of the actual situation.
Yep.
They go on to say that it is also possible that people can only focus on one thought at a time, and therefore they find it difficult to test alternative hypotheses at the same time. So, for example, in a murder case, they'll focus on one person, like whoever they think the prime suspect is, they'll go after them as hard as they can until they run out of options there, and then they'll go on to something else. They don't do them both at the same time. Is what they're trying to get at here. Moving on to motivation explanations. So this is the hot part of what we were just talking about. Motivation explanations involve an effect of desire on belief. It is known that people prefer positive thoughts over negative ones in a number of ways. This is called the Pollyanna principle, the tendency for people to remember pleasant ideas more accurately than unpleasant ones. So that's kind of, have you ever seen Criminal Minds?
Yeah.
So you know how they use that thing where like they have a cognitive interview or whatever, and they kind of bring people back. That's what they're getting at here is like people more easily remember like positive things, so they don't have to do cognitive interviews. But for negative things, they have to use cognitive interviews because they're harder and they're more likely to they're harder to recall.
Yeah, so that's why they sit there and they're like, think about this, smell the flowers, and all this other stuff. And
Yeah,
then,
kind of put them in the scene.
yeah.
So applied to arguments or sources of evidence, this could explain why desired conclusions are more likely to be believed. Okay, so for what they're trying to get at here is that like, if there's a really bad guy that nobody likes, who they consider the prime suspect, they'll feel better about putting him away. So they'll more likely go after him harder than they would somebody who could be the actual culprit, but they consider in a better light. According to experiments that manipulate the desirability of the conclusion, people demand a high standard of evidence for unpalatable ideas and a low standard for preferred ideas. So in other words, they ask, can I believe this? And for some suggestions, must I believe this? So can I believe this for some suggestions and must I believe this for others? Although consistency is a desirable feature of attitudes, and excessive drive for consistency is another potential source of bias because it may prevent people from neutrally evaluating new and surprising information. Social psychologist Ziva Kunda combines the cognitive and motivational theories, arguing that motivation creates the bias, but cognitive factors determine the size of the effect. So, that's interesting. So she combines it to say that if it's easier for you to believe this, you'll be more likely to call on a availability heuristic than if it's harder to believe. That's interesting. So moving on to another explanation, the cost benefit explanation. So explanations in terms of cost benefit analysis assume that people do not just test hypotheses in a disinterested way, but assert the costs of different errors. Using ideas from evolutionary psychology, James Frederick suggests that people do not primarily aim at truth in testing hypotheses, but try to avoid the most costly errors. For example, employers might ask one-sided questions in job interviews because they're focused on weeding out unsuitable candidates instead of finding the perfect one. That's kind of interesting. So they're saying that like this is like economic kind of way of viewing it, where I stand to gain more from weeding out bad applicants than I do from finding the perfect one who will do the job the best.
Yeah. Or throwing some, or like some jobs, you have no experience in the field at all. They're like, okay, well, you look like you'll be good, and they just throw you in there, and then they get mad at you because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
My job. What?
Well, I feel like that might. I don't think that's a Pollyanna principle. I mean, yeah, I guess that would be a cost benefit way to look at it. Because if you kind of go in there, at least you won't fuck up as bad as somebody who wasn't like palatable for the job. So even if they had to discipline you, it's better than having someone they had to constantly discipline, I guess. All right, so I guess I'll read the rest of cost benefit. I skipped it because of this word here. Yaakov Trope and Akiva Lieberman's refinement of this theory assumes that people compare the two different kinds of error, accepting a false hypothesis or rejecting a true hypothesis. For instance, someone who underestimates a friend's honesty might treat him or her suspiciously and so undermine the friendship. Overestimating a friend's honesty may also be costly, but less so. So what they're saying is like it's kind of a cost benefit analysis. I wish I could draw on here. So let's say.
Oh wait, was this screen supposed to show the what you're looking at, or am I supposed to still be looking at the slides?
You're supposed to be looking at the Wikipedia page.
Oh, I probably should have told you that as soon as we started.
So you're just seeing
slides.
So you're not even seeing any of this?
No, I'm just listening to your story, and in my head, I'm comprehending it.
Okay. That's good to know, actually.
Okay.
Well,
I just been sitting here looking at the screen since you started that, and you're like, "Oh, I wonder if I can draw on this." I was like, "Wait, you wanted us to see that?"
So let me see. Can you see the screen I'm on now?
Yeah.
So you can see the drawing I made too, then?
Yeah, on top of the yeah.
So are you looking at slides now or a Wikipedia page?
Still slides.
That's wild. Well, I'm on a Wikipedia page.
Okay. So you don't need any editing.
So I'll just kind of finish cost benefits real quick.
Yeah, okay.
When someone gives an initial impression of being introverted or extroverted, questions that match that impression come across as more empathetic. This suggests that when talking to someone who seems to be an introvert, it is a sign of better social skills to ask, do you feel awkward in social situations rather than like noisy parties? The connection between confirmation bias and social skills was corroborated by a study of how college students get to know other people. Highly self-monitoring students who are more sensitive to their environment and to social norms ask more matching questions when interviewing a high-status staff member than when getting to know fellow students. So what they're saying is because they ask those questions to a high-status staff member instead of their fellow students, they were considered to have more social grace because they in a cost benefit way of looking at it, they had more to lose from fucking up talking to a high status social member than one of their cohorts or students.
So like, say you're at a job site or something, then you break something, you write that to your employees like, what should I do? Can we fix this before you go to the big boss and say, hey, guess what I did?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's just like a cost benefit way of like looking at confirmation bias, because they say that it would be like you might lose grace with your friends, but that grace that you lose would not equal to the amount of grace you would lose from telling your job or your boss. All right, let me hopefully erase this, or this might be here for the rest of the time. So the third view that they were talking about was exploratory versus confirmatory. So psychologists Jennifer Lerner and Philip Tetlock distinguish two different kinds of thinking processes. Exploratory thought neutrally considers multiple points of view and tries to anticipate all possible objections to a particular position, while confirmatory thought seeks to justify a specific point of view. Lerner and Tetlock say that when people expect to justify their positions to others whose view they already know, they will tend to adopt a similar position to those people and then use confirmatory thought to bolster their own credibility. However, if external parties are overly aggressive or critical, people will disengage from thought altogether and simply assert their personal opinions without justification. Lerner and Tetlock say that people only push themselves to think critically and logically when they know in advance they will need to explain themselves to others who are well-informed, genuinely interested in the truth, and whose views they don't already know. Because those conditions rarely exist, they argue most people are using confirmatory thought most of the time instead of exploratory. So what they're trying to get at here is that for confirmatory thought, you wouldn't try to explain your position as well, or like you wouldn't even for confirmatory.
Good? Come on, come on, Joe.
for confirmatory thought, you wouldn't even want to like address the other positions because you're confirming that your position is right. Where in exploratory thought, you're thinking, oh, my position may not be right. Let me take a look at everybody's position and make sure I can pick the best one. And they're saying that you'll only ask yourself to do exploratory thinking if you had to present your information to others. So that's kind of like what I do here. I like kind of try to give both sides of the picture. That way everyone can like, I'm not like stepping on anyone's toes. I'm like respecting everyone's point of view. But like, if I'm trying to be extremely confirmatory, I'll say what I have to say. And if you feel differently, that's on you, not me.
Yeah.
And they're saying that confirmation bias happens more in confirmatory thought because you're not even considering the other side. You're just saying that your side's right, which is another, my side bias is another word for confirmation bias. All right, so make believe. Developmental psychologist Eve Whitmore has argued that beliefs and biases involved in confirmation bias have their roots in childhood coping through make-believe, which becomes the basis for more complex forms of self-deception and illusion into adulthood. The friction brought on by questioning an adolescent with developing critical thinking can lead to the rationalization of false beliefs, and the habit of such rationalization can become unconscious over the years. So what they're saying is like, when you question adolescents who's developing like critical thinking skills and you kind of get it wrong, they'll be more strong. At least what I'm getting from here is that they'll believe their own false beliefs stronger, and those false beliefs will follow them into adulthood. And because they have false beliefs that aren't based on reality, they'll be more likely to believe more false beliefs in the future because they don't have that strong base in like the truth. And this leads
to the whole thing with like, oh,
sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying the whole thing of like little kids believing in Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, all that going into teenagers, and then all of a sudden finding out, oh hey, they don't really exist. Falsely, what you were talking about.
Yeah, and then if how they were saying with exploratory versus confirmatory, if external partners are overly aggressive or critical, people will disengage from the thought altogether and simply assert their personal opinions without justifying it. So like for a teenager, if you say, oh, you shouldn't be drinking, and they think that they should, if you're too critical with them, they're just gonna believe that you're just a dickhead and you just don't want them to be happy or whatever the fuck they want to feel at that moment because you won't let them do the thing that you know is wrong.
Wow.
And that will lead to them having more confirmation bias because they think that anyone who is trying to get them to stop drinking or whatever is just being a dick and not in their best interest.
Yeah, I don't have a problem drinking.
All right, so on this others page, there's one more thing I'd like to get into for this, like one more theory, or two more theories, I guess I'll go over real quick. So the first one we kind of got into earlier with, I believe it was cognitive versus motivational. So it's kind of a cognitive theory, and they call it cognitive laziness, and it's a reduced effort framework that people use a variety of techniques to reduce the effort of making decisions. You've been around me long enough to know that if I'm having trouble making a decision, I'll just flip a coin.
Yeah.
So that's cognitive laziness.
That screen at all, or did you want us to be still looking at the slides?
It's okay. Because what I'm recording is what is on my screen right now.
Okay,
so I didn't even know that you were only seeing slides up until today.
Okay, cool. I didn't know if they see this, like they see this side also. It's like, oh, that's kind of weird. But all right, yeah. Okay, cool. So you can't come up on the decision, so you let fate decide. Like
that's 50-50? What I do.
Yep.
But
you know, since you've been doing that too, I've been doing that a lot more also. Especially if it comes to spending money. If my credit card faces up, I'm spending it. Faces down,
and they say that that's a form of cognitive laziness doesn't have to be confirmation bias, but it's a heuristic that's similar to confirmation bias. So it's like a reason why they believe that it happens is that we just kind of, there's too many decisions for us to make in a day. So we use heuristics to kind of make it easier for us to survive and like not use as much mental power and stuff.
Okay.
So in 2002, Daniel Conahan and Shane Frederick proposed a process called attribute substitution, which happens without conscious awareness. According to this theory, when someone makes a judgment of a target attribute, which is computationally complex, so when someone makes a judgment which is computationally complex, a rather more easily calculated heuristic attribute is substituted. In effect, a difficult problem is dealt with by answering a rather simpler problem without the person being aware that this happens. So like a good example of this would be like, if you go to a guru or something and you ask them a question and they give you a like kind of riddler answer where you're answering another question, but it's not the question that you asked, but it's supposed to like the answer kind of applies to both.
Yeah.
That's what they're getting at here with attribute substitution. So they'll say that the difficult like problem that you have will be replaced with heuristic like cognitive laziness or the availability heuristic to make it easier for your brain to kind of compute the answer to that problem.
Okay. Is that another one?
No, it's the same one.
Okay. I just looks like you're killing them back to back. I'm like, wow, you're wired.
So Kahneman and Frederick proposed 3 conditions for attribute substitution. The first condition is that the target attribute is relatively inaccessible. The substitution is not expected to take place in answering factual questions. So like, what's your birthday, or how old are you, or do you feel thirsty? You wouldn't have to like use a heuristic to answer that because they're easily accessible to you. Like, you know your birthday, you know your name in most cases, like, you know, like easy stuff that's easy to you. So like this stuff only happens for like complex problems, not things that are easily explainable. This also can happen if an associated attribute is highly accessible. This might be because it is evaluated automatically in normal perception, or because it has been primed, or someone has like made it so that you're more likely to answer a certain way. So for example, someone who has been thinking about their love life and then is asked how happy they are might substitute how happy they are with their love life rather than how happy they are in total. I think that's a great example, because like if you're focused on how good of a basketball player you are and someone asks you, and like you're fucking trash, and someone asks you how happy you are, you're gonna say, I'm not happy because I suck at basketball, even though you probably have 1,000 other things in your life to be happy about.
Yeah. So you focus on the one negative, then looking at all the positives.
Yeah, and that one negative is automatically like switched because of the attribute, what's it called? Attribute substitution, and that happens unconsciously. So like you don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah.
Which is why I think this stuff's so interesting, because like once you like are aware that you're doing it and like you see it happen a couple of times, then you like know. And once you know, that's just a good place to be, because then you can change and like kind of address it, you know? But the third condition for attribute substitution is that the substitution is not detected and corrected by the reflective system. For example, a bat and a ball together might cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Many subjects incorrectly answer 10 cents. An explanation in terms of attribute substitution, that is, rather than work out the sum, subjects parse the sum of 110 into a large amount and a small amount, which is easy to do. Whether they feel the right answer will depend on whether they check the calculation, whether they feel that the right answer, whether they feel that is the right answer will depend on whether they check the calculation with their brain, pretty much. So just for the sake of it, I'm gonna go through this example. So a ball and a bat costs $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? So if I guess that's right, because if the bat is 10 cents or $1 more than the ball, then if the ball is 10 cents, the bat would have to be $1.10. So that's just kind of how really like the substitution, like, because it makes sense to say that, oh, the bat costs $1 more than the ball. Okay, so then the bat's $1, the ball is 10 cents, because that's just easy math. It's a lot easier than doing the whole computation. But
then when you go to checkout, they hit you with that tax.
Yeah, well, yeah. Once you hit that checkout, you realize that this math ain't adding up.
whoa! I said
you realize, and that's attribute substitution. Kind of a quick overview. So to get into the consequences of why confirmation bias is kind of like bad and hurts us.
Yeah.
So psychologist Benoit Monin reports a series of experiments in which subjects looking at photographs of faces have to judge whether they have seen those faces before. It has been repeatedly found that Attractive faces are more likely to be mistakenly labeled as familiar. Monin interprets the results in terms of attribute substitution. The heuristic attribute in this case is a warm glow or a positive feeling towards someone else that might either be due to their being familiar with them or those people being attractive. This interpretation, however, has been criticized because not all the variance in familiarity is accounted for by the attractiveness of the photograph. So like it could be that like I feel more comfortable looking at black faces than I do at white. So that would
Whoa.
that could be a reason why I would believe that that person looks more familiar to me though, instead of like their attractiveness. So that's why and this kind of goes back to the dialectic where this guy picked and said that it's the warm glow is the reason why the effect happens, but it's not rigorously defendable because I could easily say it's because of their race or it's because of their eye color or something else. Like, but that's kind of how that kind of goes back to the dialectic, like how I was saying I'd bring it back in before.
Yep.
So that's kind of how confirmation bias can be a problem because you'd be more likely to go with something you feel more comfortable with than what might actually be true. For judgments of morality and fairness, legal scholar Cass Sunstein has argued that attribute substitution is pervasive when people reason about moral, political, or legal matters. So, given a difficult, novel problem in these areas, people are likely to search for a more familiar, related problem or like a prototype case and apply its solution as a solution for the harder problem, which would obviously be a substitution of the thing that you're trying to actually get at being replaced with something else. And this would be bad for like a court case because it's like, what if the situations aren't really that similar, but you're treating them like they're the same?
Yeah, okay.
Let's say Central Park 5, I don't know enough about them to really speak on it, but if something like that happened again in the future, if they use what the people did in the past, then those people would be, the people who got caught would be in a lot of trouble, even if they didn't do anything. All right, so I'm gonna get into maybe I'll get into 4 explanations for why this is bad in the real world, or 4 real world effects of confirmation bias. Then I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this all up because we're already over the time I said we'd be going to.
No, you're fine, you're fine. Because talking about this stuff, what it makes me realize, what it makes me think about is back then when they believed that if women were smarter than something, they were witches. They would burn them at the stake. That's what you're talking about being biased and everything. And that's what's wrapping up. And then everything that we're talking about now is something that I go through every day.
Yeah.
So damn near every day.
Relates.
Yeah.
Good. That's honestly why I kind of wanted to wait until later to kind of do this because I wanted to make sure I got it right. You know what I mean? Because this is like something that a lot of people will be able to relate it to because like everyone experiences confirmation bias one way or another. But to kind of get into the real world effects of confirmation bias, we'll start with social media. So in social media, confirmation bias is amplified by the use of filter bubbles or algorithmic editing, which displays to individuals only information they are likely to agree with while excluding opposing views. So this is kind of like how Facebook, if you like a bunch of like Republican sites, you'll be showing a lot more Fox News or whatever news like kind of fits with Republican views.
Yep.
And that's
which is wild,
right? You don't get the other side. So like even if they have a good argument, if you have confirmation bias, you won't to go back to the slides real quick. Oh, that's why it's like that. Can you see me now?
Huh?
Okay, so that's why that happened.
I see myself.
Yeah, I fucked up. All right, can you see the Wikipedia page now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, it's because I had it on the wrong thing.
I did, but okay, now I can. All right, we're good.
To get back to what we were talking about excluding opposing views.
Yeah.
Which one was it? I think it was the belief. Well, I mean, I guess you wouldn't even get to belief perseverance if you're only being shown beliefs that you believe in.
Mhm.
So it would be more, you would have more overconfidence in your beliefs because you wouldn't see anybody else's side. You would just believe that your view is constantly right because you're in like an echo chamber.
Yep, that's all you listen to. That's all you want to see.
Yeah, and then that's what you get, and that just leads to like stronger beliefs and that overconfidence, even though you might be shown beliefs that are or like different information that kind of negates your beliefs.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it can happen in social media. That was only the first line of this, so we might have a little bit to say about this. Some have argued that confirmation bias is the reason why society can never escape from filter bubbles because individuals are psychologically hardwired to seek information that agrees with their pre-existing values and beliefs. Others have further argued that the mixture of the two is degrading democracy, claiming that algorithmic editing removes diverse viewpoints and information, and that unless filter bubble algorithms are removed, voters will be unable to make fully informed political decisions. I mean, I feel like that argument that unless filter bubbles or algorithmic editing is removed, voters will be unable to make fully informed political decisions. I feel like that kind of takes away from like human, like the ability for humans to decide for themselves, because they don't even get to decide if they want to only see what kind of information they want. They have to have it filtered by somebody else. So that's just another kind of way of filtering it, which I think is just kind of stupid because then you're filtering it again, even though you don't really need to, because those people who like make those decisions can easily decide to go look at a different website.
Uh-huh.
Do you have anything on social media before I go like into the next stanza here?
Social media is freaking wild.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially for us growing up, watching it like kind of evolve.
Yeah, because when we were growing up, it was a lot of different websites that people were getting on, and all of a sudden those websites are dead, and now boom, 3, 4 different, now starting 5 different websites are blowing up right now. That's all it's about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, who knows how long they'll stay big, you know?
Oh yeah, we're gonna make our own social media. Am I right?
I mean, I was thinking about it, but so the rise of social media has contributed greatly to the rapid spread of fake news. That one was for you, Donald. That is false and misleading information that is presented as credible news from a seemingly reliable source. Confirmation bias, selecting and reinterpreting evidence to support one's beliefs, is one of 3 main hurdles cited as to why critical thinking goes astray in these circumstances. The other 2 are shortcut heuristics. When overwhelmed or short of time, people rely on simple rules such as group consensus or trusting an expert or role model. So, great example would be Donald Trump, actually, because a lot of people just took his word for it. Like people were injecting bleach to try to kill COVID because of what he said. So that's a view of confirmation bias because he believes that whatever Donald Trump is true, whatever Donald Trump says is true, and they'll like do whatever he says because he said it because they have that confirmation bias that whatever he says is true.
Wow, political Kyle out here.
I mean, that's just like an example. I'm not trying to politicize it. But in combating, sorry, what were you saying?
Getting sweaty.
In combating the spread of fake news, social media sites have considered turning towards digital nudging. This can currently be done in 2 different forms. This includes nudging of information and nudging of presentation. So nudging of information entails social media sites providing a disclaimer or label questioning or warning users of the validity of the source, while nudging of presentation includes exposing users to new information which they might not have sought out but could introduce some viewpoints that may combat their own confirmation biases. So pretty much these are ways to like kind of beat confirmation bias. And one way they say to do that is like challenge the credibility of whatever source that they're getting their information from. And then the other way, when the first, what I just said was, what was it? That was nudging of information. So they like kind of say that the source that you're getting it from might not be giving you the full picture. And while the nudging of presentation is literally just presenting them information that they would not have searched it for on their own. We'll go into finance. So confirmation bias can lead investors to be overconfident, ignoring evidence that their strategies will lose money. In studies of political stock markets, investors made more profit when they resisted bias. For example, participants who interpreted a candidate's debate performance in a neutral rather than partisan way were more likely to profit. To combat the effect of confirmation bias, investors can try to adopt a contrary viewpoint just for the sake of arguing. In one technique, they imagine that their investments have collapsed and ask themselves why that might happen. So in money, like let's say you're about to bet $500 on GameStop stock or whatever.
Like stock markets, yeah, the hedge funders and stuff.
Yeah, and they're saying that confirmation bias for them leads them to be very overconfident in what they believe to be as the best view, when really they lose money on that view. And if they chose a different strategy, they wouldn't lose that money.
Or gambling.
Yeah, so that's pretty much gambling. I mean, that's what it is. And then to combat that, they were saying that you should like imagine that what you're doing is going to fail, and how would you prevent it from failing, and then go by that instead of like going with your blind faith, pretty much. So for social psychology, social psychologists have identified two tendencies in the way people seek or interpret information about themselves. Self-verification is the drive to reinforce the existing self-image and self-enhancement. Okay. Self-verification is the drive to reinforce the existing self-image, and self-enhancement is the drive to seek positive feedback. Both are served by confirmation biases. So in experiments where people are given feedback that conflicts with their self-image, they are less likely to attend to it or remember it when given self-verifying feedback. They reduce the impact of such information by interpreting it as unreliable. So like one example of this would be like that example of like a teenager drinking, like I was saying. If they would say that the person who doesn't want them to drink isn't a very reliable source, and that not drinking is not as bad as what they is they would say that the person who's saying that they shouldn't drink is not a reliable source. And yeah, they would just say that's like the information's wrong, even if it's right. And that's a form of confirmation bias because they're overconfident in their view, even in the face of different information that would make their belief untrue. So confirmation bias can also play a key role in the propagating of mass delusions. The witch trials are a frequently cited example of this.
Hey.
So for another example, well, I mean, that's exactly what you were saying. Like they were overconfident in the fact that they thought witches were true, even though like nobody survived the witch trials. Yeah. So, and that's just how like mass delusions are. And who knows what mass delusion we're going through right now? Like that's just kind of what I think of when I see this stuff. It's like, wow, there's so much evidence that it happens. Am I really the exception? Like, am I really the only person this doesn't happen to? Yeah. I don't believe so. Another way this kind of affects us in real life is through paranormal beliefs. So one factor in the appeal of alleged psychic readings is that listeners apply a confirmation bias, which fits the psychic statement to their own lives. So like, you know how astrology will say like, oh, you're a Pisces, so you have XYZ
Yeah.
attributes that everybody in the world has, but like
Yeah.
because you're Pisces, it's stronger in you.
Yeah. I'm about to
Um,
call you one of our science teachers. Our old science teacher keep burping.
yeah, I'm getting old, man. But by making a large number of ambiguous statements in each setting, the psychic gives the client more opportunities to find a match. This is one of the techniques of cold reading, with which a psychic can deliver a subjectively impressive reading without any prior information about a client. Investigator James Rondi compared the transcript of a reading to a client's report of what the psychic had said and found that the client showed a strong selective recall of the ones that he actually hit. So that's a version of confirmation bias because he's ignoring the signs that the psychic is kind of making it up, like pulling it out of his ass, while giving stronger consideration to the ones that he got right, just because they're right. To kind of relate that to this, I believe that would be disconfirmation bias because they would set higher standards of like remembering for the ones that he got right than he did for the ones that he got wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. As a striking illustration of confirmation bias in the real world, Nickerson mentions numerological pyramidology, refers to the various religious or pseudoscientific speculations regarding pyramids, most often the Giza Pyramid Complex and the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. The practice of finding meaning in the proportions of the, I guess I could have just read that. There are many different length measurements that can be made of, for example, the Great Pyramid of Giza in many ways to contribute or manipulate them. This is kind of where we were at when we were saying that people were like connecting too many dots.
Yeah.
Hence, it is almost inevitable that people who look at these numbers selectively will find superficially impressive correspondences, for example, with the dimensions of Earth. So they're saying that like belief that the pyramids are built like a specific way or special is a form of confirmation bias because there's a lot more evidence saying that you shouldn't believe it than there is that you should, but you still believe it. All right, we already hit all that. All right, so do you have any more? Let me try to stop the screen share here. Do you have any more comments or you want to talk about the presentation a little bit or anything you liked?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, thinking about this too, I mean, it is something that we go through every single day and we don't realize it. So opening it up and showing other people what you actually go through, not like everyone does, like every day is pretty eye opening.
Yeah, and
It was very entertaining.
it's entertaining too. Good.
Yeah, it was.
Because like for me, when it was like going to school, I would go to school and like be presented all these ideas that all these like kids from like inner cities, like they already knew all this shit. So it wasn't even new to them. It was just old shit. But to me, like I was so shocked because I had never seen that information before or seen it presented in that light. So like I just want to like kind of give that experience to other people because I want to give that experience to other people because they I feel like knowledge shouldn't be something you have to pay for. Like I believe that everyone should be able to know everything because without that, I believe that like humanity is kind of like a team, you know, like we're only as
Yeah.
strong as our weakest link. So if we have people on the left side who believe like the wrong thing, we're not as strong as we could be. And I just want to be like as strong as I can so I can like pass this world on to my son, knowing that he's in better hands than what I was.
Yeah. Build that foundation for him.
But and hopefully that'll happen through these videos.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gone over some pretty cool stuff so far. Like confirmation bias today was definitely one I feel a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, I'm happy I joined this one.
Yeah. So my next episode for all the people at home is going to be a pretty big one. It'll be my 10th episode. So I don't know. I'm gonna try to do something special for it. Hopefully I'll have it out by Friday or Saturday, but you know, I'm kind of just winging this shit. So
The best
don't
part,
expect
dude.
too
Wing it.
much. Anyway, if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Any comments or anything else, I really do appreciate your guys' comments, and I do look at them and take them into consideration. If you have any like suggestions for what I could do next or anything like that, please leave it in the comments. I'm always looking at them, and I'm really just happy to kind of get this information out to people. And thanks for watching.